I took a fire lookout job deep in the remote forests of the Pacific Northwest, expecting a peaceful summer surrounded by towering pines, crisp air, and the solitude that city life had long denied me. On my first day, I arrived at the rustic cabin perched high on a ridge overlooking miles of wilderness where the horizon seemed to stretch forever. The job promised breathtaking views, long hikes, and the chance to truly disconnect, but it quickly became clear that the rules were not just strict, they were terrifying. Each morning, I was expected to meticulously inspect the surrounding forest for even the faintest wisp of smoke, a task that demanded unwavering attention because a single overlooked ember could ignite a catastrophic wildfire. I had been trained in theory, but nothing prepared me for the oppressive silence of the forest, the constant awareness that a mistake could cost millions in property, ecosystems, and even lives. Communication was limited. Our only lifeline was a radio that occasionally crackled with updates from the ranger station, often in the middle of storms that seemed to isolate the cabin further from civilization. One rule that shook me was the mandate to never leave the tower without checking in every 2 hours, no matter the weather. Lightning storms could strike without warning, and while the tower was built to withstand most natural hazards, the idea of being stranded miles from the nearest road was deeply unsettling. The guidelines for fire reporting were equally daunting. If I spotted smoke, I had to assess its size, wind direction, and potential threat instantly, then relay the information precisely and calmly. Panic was not an option, but the pressure was suffocating when even a cloud of steam from a river could trigger an emergency call. Living alone in the cabin forced me to confront more than just the rules. It exposed me to the raw intensity of isolation. Nights were punctuated by the sounds of wildlife, owls, coyotes, and occasionally something I could not identify, and the darkness felt absolute. Safety protocols demanded that I maintain a fully stocked emergency kit, no evacuation routes, and constantly monitor weather conditions because the forest was as unforgiving as it was beautiful. I learned to respect every guideline, from keeping the firewood stacked safely outside to storing food to avoid attracting bears. Breaking a rule was not a trivial offense. It could lead to immediate dismissal, or worse, endanger lives. Over the weeks, I began to understand why these rules existed. A single careless decision could spark a wildfire, threaten endangered species, or put future visitors at risk. The psychological impact of constant vigilance was intense. My mind was always scanning the tree line, listening for distant crackles, smelling the air for smoke, and calculating risk. Even mundane tasks like collecting water or hiking for supplies had strict safety protocols, including informing the ranger station of my location and estimated return time. The isolation had another effect. It magnified every worry, every imagined danger, and forced a level of self-reliance I had never experienced. I was responsible not just for the forest, but for myself, and the rules became a lifeline rather than a constraint. Social interaction was limited to rare encounters with passing rangers or delivery personnel, and even then, each visit required adherence to strict reporting and hygiene protocols, particularly during wildfire season, when contamination and safety were paramount. One particularly terrifying moment occurred during a sudden heat wave when the surrounding forest became a tinderbox. I was required to perform extra patrols, walking miles in scorching temperatures, constantly on alert for any sign of smoke or fire. The risk of dehydration, heat exhaustion, or injury was real, yet leaving my post was not an option. That day, I fully grasped the gravity of my role. The rules were terrifying because they reflected the very real dangers inherent to the job, and following them was the difference between safety and disaster. My respect for fire lookouts grew exponentially. This job was not a summer retreat, but a crucial, high-stakes responsibility to protect lives, homes, and nature. As the season progressed, I learned to internalize the rules, turning fear into disciplined awareness. I came to appreciate the structure they provided, the check-ins, the patrols, the meticulous documentation, because they were designed to prevent mistakes when consequences were catastrophic. By the end of my tenure, I had developed a profound connection with the forest, a heightened awareness of its fragility, and an understanding that vigilance, patience, and adherence to protocol were as vital as any firefighting equipment. And that's something worth remembering when you next consider stepping into a role that may seem idyllic on the surface, but is built on rules that are terrifying for a reason: to protect the world around you.